Thank you, Bunty, for absolutely zero notice for showing up and being part of this. Again, an experiment for both of us. Uh, so, basically, I got an interesting question from one of the persons who reads my scribbles. And उनका ये question था कि, and actually this was pertaining to a post that was done about a couple of days back, which was about Buddha's second arrow, that there is this the inevitability of the basic suffering, but then there is the suffering upon suffering, which perhaps could be a case where you could do something about it. So in a sense, it was suffering is inevitable, but misery is optional. And then the post also went on to invoke Swami Vivekananda, saying that there could be four levers or paths: karma yoga, jnana yoga, bhakti yoga, jnana yoga, and one could have multiple uh, weightages or practices to invoke them and tread this life. So the question that came up was interesting, just that social systems actually do not like these kind of approaches, because they would see that these practices, these spiritual practices, are actually asking you to get rid of emotions or close down on emotions or keep aside your emotions and become numb to things happening around. If I'm interpreting this right, then this is what the question meant. So for me, Bunty, when I got that question, I thought I'll just do this small video along with you, and let's see what happens along.
So this reminds me of two episodes that recently happened. One episode is I have been unwell for a week or more, and all action has been on the mobile, watching some videos here and there. There is a very famous guru on Instagram called Parmananda Maharaj, doing very well and answering a lot of questions on a lot of issues. One old guy was afraid of death and did not want to be reborn again. So there is this video where he actually specifies, he says, I don't want to come back. And Maharaj says, yeah, just do chant the name and you'll be fine. He says, that I can't do. I am unable to concentrate or do this. He says, start, you will do okay. He says, no, I can't do. Then Maharaj was also stunned for a moment. What can I say? This is one episode, whatever he says later, and they say God's wish and whatever. Another episode is I recently attended a very, very longish 30-day Vipassana meditation retreat. And when you start talking on the last day, there is a lot of talks that happen which are very idealistic. So there were 2-3 people. One was an advocate, one was a guy who runs some kind of NGO or influences policies in governments or something like that. He was young and he was very, very gung-ho about let's change the system and let's enter the adhyatma into the educational system and this and that. And when he heard that I'm a writer, he says, you've got to write a letter to the government and stuff like that. I specified, look, I don't. But I am not activist, any kind of activist in any way anymore. What I do is I have realized that personal agency has a lot of strength, and I need to be an example first to myself and others, for which I'll quickly narrate a story that I have done on our podcast sometimes. I live in a place where right outside my society gate, there are a lot of people who come on the wrong side of the traffic. And it is very, very scary because when we exit on our vehicles from the society, we can't see them. So there is a chance we may bang into them. And this happens even law officers and other people are doing this. it saves them say 45 seconds. Because otherwise they would have to go like this and come back like this and then move wherever they want to. So nobody seems to want that. And not only that, my own society people sometimes go on the wrong side because they want to save time. I used to get very angry at one time. I even contemplated I'll hold a placard all day here till it becomes a major issue. But my daughter kept cooling me down. So over a period, I realized that I had made a good example for my daughter at least. And this is an example I gave them. But the guy who influences policy wasn't convinced. He kept asking me to write, and he had some very radical views of what kind of government we should have and stuff like that. And I kind of stayed away and I said, no, you want some help, I'll help you, but I'll not be the one who will be participating in this. So these are the examples that come to mind, and the word that I am trying to come to with all these examples is responsibility. And as an individual, you cannot let go of your agency and keep claiming that some magical system is going to resolve something for you or others, even if it is just basic interaction. So you asked me whether we could speak. I have not been in a good state of health and in fact even mind for a couple of days. But I said yes, because now once I have said yes, then it is my responsibility to bring all my faculties to the table and give my best. What they are worth is not my concern, but my responsibility is my concern. So that is my humble submission to start with.
These are wonderful invocations, Bunty. Thank you for sharing that. I think a bunch of things there, and the initial question. I'll try to start off with the initial question and try to see if something emerges and connects to what you just shared. From the question standpoint,
Can you speak a little?
Yeah. From the question standpoint that came up, there are a bunch of devices or heuristics that I keep coming back to, which help me come across the situation a little better or think of the situation a little better. One of the heuristics is whenever there is a very certainty-driven, very predictable, very control-driven statement, extremely confident statement that couples two things and says this is the case and there is no other case. That for me is a red flag most of the times, and I believe that's a good red flag to have. So in which case, imagine there is spiritual system, spiritual path, and there is social system, social path. First of all, to see them as distinct itself could be questioned. But let's say if you were to even see that, then within spiritual system, there are multiple schools of practices and thoughts and beliefs. Within social system, there are multiple schools of thoughts and beliefs and practices. And then it could be the case that one spiritual system could be seeing the various social system very differently, not in the same way, and vice versa. Which brings us to the point of something called as meta-interpretation. In the sense, how do we interpret our own interpretations? What are we doing with our interpretations? Because interpretation is the first intuition that comes online, and it's there. But then, if we are slightly observant, then we know that these are interpretations. They are maps. They're not the territories, and we can't. No matter how much we fight on the maps, the territory doesn't shift because we are fighting on the maps. So that's the first thing that comes up. The second is, yes, there are certain systems, certain spiritual systems that call for more inwardly gaze, spending more time inwards, and withdrawal from society, becoming an ascetic, vairagya. So imagine, certain spiritual system calling for complete, this. And then there could be other spiritual system that could say, go inwardly, and or even if you don't go and engage in the world for something different, right? So imagine there is x-axis, one which says go inwardly and go outwardly, and then another on the y-axis which says for selfish reasons, for selfless reasons. So you could actually have four possibilities: go inward for selfish reasons, go inward for selfless reasons, go outward for selfless reasons, and go outward for selfish reasons. Now these are not very tight categories, they are placeholders. So that's the second thing that comes to mind, that depending on our deeper cosmological beliefs, deeper belief system that we have, we might come to this question, come to this invocation very different. Certain schools would indeed call for, they would say everything is Maya, everything is Leela, no matter what you do, it's not going to help. Go inward, focus on yourself, purify yourself, moksha, liberation, nirvana, remove your sins, so on and so forth. The other would say that the outward is the path to get there. So do that. So that's the second invocation. इसी का एक सबसेट बनता है, जो थर्ड है वो ये है कि we think, we feel, we say, we do. Largely, we are a think, feel, say, do species. Say and do is outwardly. You have an access to my saying, you have an access to my doing, but you don't have an access to my thinking and feeling. Unless I report it, but then you don't know whether I'm reporting the right or not, or a verified or modified version. So when people say that you go inwardly, you go outwardly, some people would say focus on your saying, focus on your doing, focus on your thinking, focus on your emotions. And again, there would be some school of thought that would say stay away from them, stay away from your emotions, make them numb, stay away from your thinking. Thoughts are just coming and going, can't do much about it. Words are just ultimately the next word is going to be going out in the cosmos after I've spoken it, and then where did it go? And similarly the action. So some schools of practices would say that these are hurdles, think, feel, say, do are hurdles. Some would say they are raw materials, use them. And some would say there is something beyond the two, and you need to discover the thing which is beyond. Again, it brings back to the point, there are different schools of practices and thoughts. So that's the first three container I want to build, the meta interpretation bit of it, the going inward and outward for selfish or selfless reason, and the third is using thinking, feeling, saying, doing as hurdles or raw materials, or going beyond them. I would halt here. If you have something emerging, we can do that, or we can continue.
One clarification I wanted to do that just struck me. So when I use the word responsibility, I'm cutting across all the three containers here. A drop in each of them perhaps, because this is not pertaining directly to each one of them, but is a very important part of all three. So, okay, I need to have a precursor to this. I want to explain the word responsibility, but before that I want to also ensure that it is understood what is a society. Whoever these three containers are for is the human society, and the human society is comprising of humans. So I as an individual am a very important part of this. If I am, then the society is loosely, obviously taking into consideration all the things that you said. Obviously all of those stay put properly. So that is the first contention, that I am a part of it. So now when I start with myself, I have already began the journey. Inward or outward is obviously debatable and depends upon the persona, personality of the person, moods, emotions, events, all the things that influence us in any given environment. Uh, so when I say that I want to explain who is this human I am talking about. So there is this personality based view of myself. So when you come and push me in a crowd and I feel, why can't you look where you are going and why you are pushing me? So then I am reacting as a person who's been jostled or unhappy with the way he's being dealt with in that moment.
Right.
That is a reaction to something. When this responsibility word is being brought up, this has also several layers. One is obviously social responsibility. How are you as a citizen? How are you as a family member? How are you as a friend? How are you as a professional? All these influence the society of humans, which indirectly again come back to me as well. And yet there is this, I hate to use the term inward journey because there is no other journey as far as I am concerned, because it's further loaded with other layers of meanings, but for want of a better term. So this body and this mind are the two things that I am comparatively sure of. Comparatively means I may think I understand the world, but you did very nicely put that the social may look at the spiritual from a different angle and the spiritual may look at the social from a different angle. So personas, personalities, environments, times, moods, emotions, physical and other kinds of well-being, everything impacts us at different times and we may keep on changing that. Whereas the responsibility towards oneself has a little more control, just a little more control, not always so, because it requires a state of mind which is a studying state of mind, if I were to use the term. Because I don't want to load it with spiritual magnetism as of right now. It's just a studying state of mind. Why am I acting like this? Who am I? What is it that is bringing up the anger when I am jostled? Was it actually the push, or am I already worried about something else? Or was it really a physical hurt? I already have a problem, I am unwell, and why is he pushing me? Anything. And then the layers, and then the layers, and then the layers. Now this kind of responsibility scares people, scares me also many times, but it has one advantage that is very seldom spoken about, and that is when I start understanding myself a little better, automatically I know where Hemant comes from, automatically I know where the other person comes from, where the system comes from. This is my submission, and then one last thing I want to say is to me, most systems when they were formed with the ideal in mind. That they get compromised is due to our own lack of wisdom. But when they are set, there is only good in mind most times. Is what my general belief is. Obviously, there will be some that will not fall under this category, and there will be some that will absolutely match this. So yeah, this is something I wanted to share.
Actually, building on the beautiful invocation that you just gave, Bunty, I mean, if what comes to awareness on the word responsibility is the ability to respond.
Yeah.
And then there is this, there are at least two words that have stayed with me for almost about 12 years now, which I am deeply grateful to have learned from Swami Subodhananda. And he said there is a distinction between Anukriya and Pratikriya. Pratikriya is reaction and Anukriya is response. The first one, which is the pratikriya, is very, very tight, very impulsive, very, driven by impulses and habits and biases. Anukriya is more either it's over a period of time of your deeper reflections, even if the time to respond is the same as the reaction, but you don't respond in the same manner as you have reacted earlier.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing that comes to my mind. I also believe that, like, let's say if we were having this conversation 13 years back, I would believe that this conversation would have had a different texture altogether. What we would bring, what we would experience even now, and what we would do to each other and do to ourselves would be very different than what is doing now. So in that sense, I think if one is on the path, one can have the first person experience of a different responsibility, the ability to respond differently than one is responding earlier. And in that sense, I think the cultivation of practice and the awareness of it can be very helpful, is what I would just add up. So I want to tie it back to the thing that you also talked about, your Vipassana. Towards the end, that there was this gentleman who was very clearly cited on doing something on an activism front. I can relate to that. I can relate to a version of myself a few years back very easily. I think over a period of time, once you become slightly more exposed and aware and reflective of the systems we occupy, maybe one can have a different approach to this. And what I mean by that is, very recently I was fortunate to interview Betty Soufla, and in fact the subject of my conversation with her was, she gave a talk which was democracy in transition, US democracy in transition. And for the talk I had done some reading, and obviously for my book also I had done a little bit of reading. It was very surprising for me to see that the founding fathers of US democracy were themselves skeptical about democracy. Not only that, very recently I saw a talk between Dr. Trilochan Sastry, the Association for Democratic Reforms, and Acharya Prashant, the guy who's promoting the idea of Vedanta. There was this interesting talk, and there was a quote. I think the quote that came up in that thing was a quote from Dr. Ambedkar. Very interestingly, the quote said that democracy is actually something to the effect saying that democracy is extremely weak on the topsoil of Indian psyche or culture, which is essentially undemocratic. So these two things tell me that, the layers that we are trying to build upon each other, even in this conversation, as we are trading this, Bunty, there would be times during the conversation when you want to say something, but you know that I'm speaking something, so maybe you hold it back, or vice versa. Or you want to express your disagreement, but you want to hold it back because you don't know, maybe the next statement might have solved for the disagreement in the first one. So there is this constant micro-tuning that happens between, even human beings. And then obviously it will happen at such a scale that democracy's thing. And so where does it all take us? I think it takes us to the fact that there's an interesting quote: when the revolution becomes the state, it becomes my enemy again. And what it says is, when the revolution becomes the state, it becomes my enemy again, is that it is said that if you fight for something and if you get it, you believe that when you are there in the seat of power, you might be able to do much better things in the world. But I think that it is the nature of humans and the social system not to be tamed the way you feel it can be tamed or channeled.
So, I have a question to ask you. It is coming to mind again and again, the fact that you began with, are we in a way I'm loosely interpreting it, sacrificing our emotions uh, when we walk down these paths, uh, kind of thought. And the other thing that is coming to me, uh, this multifacetedness of thoughts, beings, uh, ways of interpretation that you so often bring to the table. Since they are mostly non-conclusive, they are ever evolving, yes, but they are non-conclusive. And do not give you the satisfaction of having a ready answer. Even though you can claim that you have 4 answers instead of 1, but the idea of having an answer which you called a red flag, by the way. But there is a certain sense of human gratification that you get when you know, oh, where is India in Asia? Okay, this is the place where it is. So there is a definitive answer, and I can start working on my presumptions and other theories from here on. That's what makes us feel as if we are on sure ground. So my question to you, a little related, a little unrelated also. How does it not scare you when you are being in this, again it's a term that I'm in a fugue state, where you allow several ideas to exist together and sometimes not even clear, and say, okay, let's see where it goes from there. Why is the fear not existent in you? Which makes you fun to talk to. I have to agree, please don't think that. But how come you made your peace with something like this? Or is there a sense of a wiser approach to knowledge that you want to bring up here?
I think it's such a beautiful invocation again, Bunty. I can't begin to describe it. I think my short answer is Bhakti Yoga.
Sorry? Bhakti Yoga.
Bhakti Yoga. I think Bhakti Yoga is essentially, so in the Karma Yoga, I am compelled to act, or I choose to act, and there is a certain kind of grounding in action that we get. There is some kind of ground that you get out of actions. Whether even I'm speaking, right? I'm speaking, so the words are getting some grounding right now. Or if I do something with my hands and legs, I get some grounding. When it comes to Dhyan Yoga, you try to constantly grapple and come up with connections and causalities and if this and then that kind of thing. And you're trying to get at better if-then statements to work with. I think these two grounds of Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga are, in my essence, should be in the service of helping us act better. And when it comes to Bhakti Yoga and Dhyana Yoga, they are essentially in the service of being in ambiguity, paradoxes, leaning into the unknowing, the unknowable. And if we spend time in all four over a period of time, you see that as a natural dance that happens. That's my first invocation. It's not that I don't get feared or insecure or anxious. I get it several times a day. I think I get all kleshas almost every day, several times. But I think over the years, the go back to zones and the go back to practices are more towards one of these four, doing that in the moment, and the next moment, and the next moment. And it is also it is difficult to wrap our heads around if the universe itself is work in progress, if the human itself is work in progress, then what finalities are we trying to see, though we see them?
Okay. One a little clarification I forgot in my earlier question is I also a couple of years back would have agreed with that activist friend of mine. There was a time when I wanted to change the world and I was desperate about let's do this, having gifted this kind of mind, why should we let it uh, waste away or something? So yeah, just that little bit of clarification. And I do not subscribe to the idea that I am the only right position in that one. I do agree with him that the society needs change, except that I personally have picked myself as the social work that I have to do for the rest of my life, and that itself is challenging enough, trust me. Like you said, every klesha comes up every day, and just the like 5-6 days that I was suffering, and the second arrow of suffering also kept striking. After 2 days at around very late in the night, I was sitting, and I literally had to tell myself, how much more are you going to cry? Why can't you just sit and watch for a bit? You just came back from a long course, you should know better. Then some kind of pause happened. Not that some kind of miracle started happening and I started getting well or not, but at least there became a little bit of observance every once in a while. I could look at myself and say, okay, it's okay, it's paining, I was coughing incessantly. So literally my ribs were coming out. So, and there was no phlegm or something. So that satisfaction of the finality wasn't happening. To connect it back to what you said. And yet, because the change of mindset happened, there was a little bit of respite. Very little, but yeah, it was there. And it kept fluctuating back to, oh, why is this happening and why can't this do this and please let this go and may the medicine work better or whatever. One last thing that I want to clarify about the emotional bit of it. You don't become stone-hearted because you walk these paths. On the contrary, you empathize with the human condition a lot more. So like all the great saints of the world to me are not gods of some kind. The beauty is that they were all human at some point. They went through their own questions about their, maybe not mortality, they were born as saints or whatever the reason, their particular dispensation, their particular alignment with the universal force or nature or God or whatever you want to call it was much better and better tuned than ours. I see them as elder brothers. They walk so that we can see the way. Oh, this is how we can do things. This is how we can perhaps relook at our prejudices. Sorry.
You saying something or can I chime in?
Deifying them only creates a gap between us and them, and that kind of makes us free to be who we are, and that again may make us stone-hearted or not, or emotional or not. There is a certain sense of balance, equanimity. Of course we get emotional, there are bursts of excitement, and I remember this black and white movie in Bengali on Sri Ramakrishna Parmananda. So he comes to his son and says, this lady says that I am Bhagwan. So let's call all the wise people and check whether I'm really Bhagwan. And he says this like a toddler would. And you really have to see the movie to realize that there is a sense of a 5-year-old when he says this. He says, I want to know, I want to know. And come on, you're checking if you're Bhagwan and you're checking in a manner of a 5-year-old. So that sense of innocence, the sense of giving up, letting go, curiosity, beauty, everything good about humankind is in that one line. I want to check, I want to check. We call everyone, call everyone. And they all announce he is Bhagwan and he is happy. And because that lady convinces everyone that he is Bhagwan. And it is a completely irrational thing in my head. But so beautiful. So yeah, please.
Yeah. In fact, I was reminded that there's this Yale thinker, psychologist called Paul Bloom, who's done extensive study on empathy. And they've tried to nuance the word empathy. So there is something called as cognitive empathy. There is something called as emotional empathy. Cognitive empathy is, I think I know what you're feeling. That's cognitive empathy. And the other is, I feel what you feel. I'm actually feeling what you're feeling, right? For example, right now you're coughing. I'm not feeling the pain here. I'm not feeling that. But I'm able to think that you would be feeling something which is very disturbing right now for you.
Yeah.
So that's that. And within that, he goes and defines a little more, saying that there is something called as empathic distress and empathic concern. The empathic distress is you're so overwhelmed by the empathy that it paralyzes you. It just sends you into panic and paralysis a lot. But there's another kind of empathy where it channels you, it invokes you into action, doing something about it, or doing something about something else that you care for. Because you can't do everything for everybody. So you you do what you can.
Yeah.
And the last bit was, it is so wonderful. You mentioned that, you look at the path of somebody else and you believe, that's the path you can learn from. By the way, there is a particular shloka I'm not remembering from Mahabharata, which actually goes on to say, I'll put it out in the notes maybe or something here, which actually says, Dharmasya tattvam nihitam guhayam. That was the third line, and the fourth line is invoking. So basically, the third line says, the right thing to do, the dharma, is extremely cave-like. It's always caving in. You won't get to the end of it.
Oh.
And hence the question is, what should you do? Oh, you should look at people who are enlightened, whom you consider enlightened, and look at some of the things that they are doing, and take that as a vector and do something. So it's wonderful that you almost said the same thing coming from Mahabharata.
Yeah. I guess I am at the end of my questions and I think.
No, and I think this is wonderful. I don't know. I'm going to be putting it out, and let's see. I think we'll put it out to the universe. This belongs to the universe, coming through us to go back to the universe. Let's see.
You've given me some food for thought in the last few questions for sure.
No, and I think I am grateful to you for holding this space, because alone I wouldn't have done this 40 minutes kind of thing, riffing. So, and I believe that everything that is coming is anyways belonging to the whole humanity, including you and me. So,
Oh, thank you so much.
thanks, Bunty. Thanks. Bye.